As Chief of Culture, Hoa leads the vision on how a sharing economy can impact a company and community. So starting out in the healthcare industry, you spent 9 years at the James Cancer Hospital directly caring for your patients, and taking that compassion and communication skills that you gained, you were able to guide your team to build a product and service that impacts people. And we are really excited to have you join us to talk about Share.
Thank you.
I know this is kind of nerve-wracking having 100 people staring at you. So just to set the tone, we at Startup Week last year had Ryan, her co-founder and husband, come out. And she totally just blew the crowd out of the water today, just saying.
Thank you all. I appreciate that.
So thank you all for coming out. Okay. I'm going to jump in with the first question.
Sure.
Pretty simple. Tell us about Share. What's going on with Share?
Yeah.
What is it? What are you doing? Give us an overview.
Sure. So thank you so much for all of you for coming. Thank you to Rev1 for always being so supportive and one of our early investors. And Heather and I have gotten to know each other very well over the past few months. So thank you so much for inviting me. So Share, how many people have seen our vans around town? Anyone yet? Oh, that's a good majority. That's awesome. So Ryan and I started Share in 2016 with a concept investment from Jaguar Land Rover. And so I quit my job at the James, took a leap of faith, and we moved our family out to Portland, Oregon for 6 months to work with them. And so that was really nerve-wracking because I kind of had this, cushy job at the James. I knew that my career was going to grow there in patient experience. That's what I wanted to do. And then this opportunity came, and I was like, why wouldn't we do this together? Ryan and I are kind of in a unique situation. We've always wanted to work together in some capacity ever since we met. We started a marketing agency in 2014 that helped entrepreneurs get their first customers and help launch their product, their brand, or whatever it might have been. And so fast forward to 2016 when we were invited out to Portland. We moved out there without a house. We have 2 children. We just packed up our lives, sold our house in 30 days, and left. Everyone was quite negative. Everyone was quite judgmental.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. And a lot of people were like, why would you want to work with your husband every day? And I was like, why wouldn't you? You're committed to that person, hopefully for life, and life is short, so why not spend as much time as possible with that person? And that's what we get to do every day, and we also get to raise our family, and we also get to grow a business together, which is just awesome. So reevaluate, when people are super negative, when you tell them about a crazy dream, right? Because sometimes those dreams they're not crazy, they're reality, and you have to make them a reality for yourself. So after being in the incubator, we moved back here, and that's when, recap. We left the incubator with a completely different business than it looks like today. So you always have to reevaluate, be able to pivot your business based on input from your investors, customers. If anyone was here this morning, Ryan talked a lot about that as well. And so after a few iterations, learning lessons, failures, Share is what it is today. And what that is a micro transportation company. So microtransit, how we describe it, falls between mass transit, so like CODA, and then ride-hailing services like Uber and Lyft. So we are for those scheduled and recurring rides that you take the most every single day. So we work with customers like Chase, Huntington Bank, Cover My Meds. We get them to pay for the rides for their employees to get to and from work. And there's a few different ways that we do that. We offer door-to-door service, so that's very white glove, concierge, you're getting out of your home, kind of like an Uber and Lyft, everyone's really used to that. And then we also do flex routes, so they're kind of like movable bus stops is how we like to explain it. So we'll have a pickup spot somewhere for a group of people to meet up at, and then we'll send one of our biggest vehicles out there to pick them all up at the same time. And then if no one schedules to be picked up at that stop, we don't stop there. So it's more efficient. We're not stopping every 15 minutes like the buses or whatever the bus does. And that's just two ways that we can help serve our customers. And what we're really trying to do is solve a parking issue. For example, like at Chase, they have 11,000 employees there and only 5,000 parking spaces. And they're renovating right now to add another 4,000 employees to that spot up at Polaris. And if you guys didn't know this is a little bit of fun fact. The office up there at Chase is the second largest building in the country behind the Pentagon, if you didn't know that. So, so they have a real issue up there. If anyone's been up there before or after during rush hour, they know how bad it is there. So they're tasked with removing 1,000 cars from their parking lot, and Share is going to be one of those solutions.
That's awesome. That's great momentum. And dovetailing into that, well, first of all, I live up there, so yes, I know how difficult that is. We could have used that today, too. I mean, trying to get parked here. We had some overflow parking lot issues. So besides just parking issues, what are some of the other issues that you're solving for through your model?
Yeah, so we're also solving single occupancy vehicles. So in Columbus, we have an 85% single occupancy vehicle issue in the morning and the afternoon when people are leaving work. So that's one person driving to the same place that maybe thousands of people are driving to. Second is the carbon emissions. And so Huntington Bank is probably the leader in this right now. They have a great sustainability department that we work with, and they're tasked with lowering their carbon emissions, and Share is helping with that.
Okay, so those are some of the same goals that Smart Columbus has.
Yes.
Can you talk about what that relationship is like with Smart Columbus?
Yeah. So Smart Columbus, they have been tasked with writing the playbook for smart cities. And so Share as a microtransit kind of fits into that because we cover a lot of those bases that they're also trying to solve for. And so with Share's playbook and how we're partnering with Smart Columbus, we can take this model to other cities that look like Columbus. And so that's kind of where Share would fall into a place that looks like Columbus. So we look for cities with 250,000 to 1 million people, urban sprawl, not very high usage of the public transit system, and just a very diverse group of people. Lots of industry is also a really good place too.
So as you're thinking about that expanding to other cities, what does that look like, and what is your what are your thoughts on microtransit in Columbus, or the transportation in general in Columbus?
Sure. So it is going to be a big behavior change because this is where mobility is moving. It's getting people to schedule their rides ahead of time so that we can take the burden off of our own infrastructure. So in LA, you can have 6 lanes of traffic. That's perfectly fine. It works for them. But in Columbus, we're supposed to grow by another 1 million people in the next 30 years. Our infrastructure is not going to support if every single person gets a car. But there's also good news because people who are younger, kind of that millennial and younger group, a lot of them, they're not even getting their driver's licenses anymore. They don't understand why you would own your own vehicle. You have to pay for insurance, gas, oil, maintenance, all that different kind of stuff. And they see that that's more of an asset and a burden to them. And so when things like ride-hailing, microtransit are coming into the market, they're usually the best adopters of all of this. So it's really getting people who have been stuck in their old mindsets to really understand why mobility is moving this way and why it's so important. It's also important because when autonomous vehicles become more readily available and have better mapping and different data sets and all of that, we can then inject those autonomous vehicles into our fleet and start using those and using electric and just really making an impact on what the roads look like in cities.
So not just impact on the roads, but you're making impacts on people's lives. Can you tell us about the program you're working with Dublin on?
Oh, yeah. So this is probably my favorite project that we're doing right now. So in Dublin, we're working directly with the city, and we are picking up seniors who live in different nursing facilities up there, and we're actually taking them out into the Dublin neighborhood. So they're going to the mall, they're going to Kroger, they're going to Bridge Park, they're getting out, the Dublin Rec Center, that's a huge one. So they're getting out, they're getting exercise, they're talking to other people, they're being social. And so 10TV did a news story on us, and they dubbed the title of that news story, share is a godsend. So that was like really cool to hear that we're impacting these older adults where they live. A lot of them want to stay in Dublin. They want to age in place. And so by providing this free shuttle service for them to get around in Dublin, to get physically active, to, flex their mental muscle, that's a really big thing. And we're hoping that other municipalities, government agencies, communities see how much of an impact this makes and that they pay for it as well. Dublin pays for every senior that rides for free, 100%.
So is that a scalable part of your business model to be able to do that and
so
expand?
we think that leveraging the private partnership and getting businesses and this governments to pay for it is definitely going to be the most sustainable way for us to make impact.
So kind of taking a little turn there, you're talking about, creating changes in people's day-to-day behavior. Is going the route of having your employer request that you do this more impactful on creating that change? How else are you thinking about creating that change in behavior?
Absolutely. So when other companies find out, especially competitive companies like Huntington and Chase, and people who really want to be the first new movers and shakers, people will go and seek out usually their HR representative and say, hey, this should be a benefit. And it should be a benefit. Just like medical, vision, dental, transportation should be offered. We should change that question on your application that says, do you have reliable transportation, to, do you need transportation? That is game changing, especially for people who are coming in at a entry-level job. They may have one car for their family, they may have no car for their family, they live 5 miles away from the bus stop, whatever their situation might be. We've found that if you offer transportation to your employees, they're happier, they're more productive. We have Wi-Fi in the vehicle so they can get whatever they need to get done before they even get to work, like check email and or they're just on social media, or they're watching a movie or whatever they might be doing to relax, before they get to work. The most stressful part of an employee's day, there's 3 parts. In the morning, getting there, when they actually get to their job, and then leaving their job. So if you're removing that barrier for those folks as well, you're going to have a more productive and happy overall person.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that you guys were really trying to tackle that last mile challenge as well. So is that something that you're really trying to focus on? Yeah,
we actually do it in Dublin today. So part of that Dublin senior circulator is that we will pick up and take that last mile for a few of the workers that are out there in Dublin right now. And so they just schedule through the app, lets us know that they're going to show up for their shift that day, and then we send a driver out to the bus stop and pick them up and take them that last mile, which I think is really important, especially living in Columbus where we get snow and, monsoons and hurricanes and whatever else you want to throw in there. And so, just think about that. Instead of having your employee walk a mile from the bus stop when they get to work, you're just miserable at that point when you get there. So I think it's the employers also showing their employees that they care about them.
So Chief of Culture, along with co-founder, that's what you're doing over at Share. Can you talk to us about what you feel like your mission is in that role, and what does the day-to-day look like for you?
Yeah. So my biggest role as Chief of Culture, it's also fancy for HR. My biggest job every single day is to make sure that the customers are taken care of, especially our sensitive population. We also transport children every day to school. So the seniors and the students, making sure that they have that safe, reliable ride and they're getting where they need to get every single day is number one, obviously. Next would be the drivers. They are literally driving our company forward. Without them, and they are the face of the company, we wouldn't be where we are today without all of their hard work and all of the things those little touches that they do for our customers. They know the customers the best. They can tell us stories of, oh yes, Betty Johnson, she likes it when you come to the back of the house and ring the doorbell and not knock the door. And, they know all those little things about the customers, and that is invaluable. And a lot of the times when people go into this corporate kind of setting, they get forgotten about. And I don't want our drivers to ever feel like they're ever forgotten about or that their voice is not being heard. And we take everything that we hear very seriously from them. And, it's not about the snacks in the break room and, a foosball table or whatever it might be. But it's actually showing them that you really do care about them and that the work that they are doing is impacting the community. And I think that that's huge, is reminding them of, don't look at yourself as just a driver. You are actually impacting people's lives every day, especially those seniors, getting them out of the house, going to adult daycare where they get to socialize and be with their friends, which they love. That is super important. And, for example, a few months ago, a lot of the drivers were like, hey, it's really hard for us to get paid every couple of weeks. We have a hard time making ends meet. And so we didn't know that. If they hadn't said anything, why would we have ever known that? And we always have a culture of open and honest and transparency too. And we were like, what would help? Weekly paychecks help? They're like, yeah, weekly would be great. So we changed it. They get paid every week now. And if that's one small, simple thing that I can do to help someone else's standard of living, I'll do it.
That's amazing. And so as you're growing your team and it's growing really quickly, can you talk about some of the learnings that you have there, some of the ways you've approached it that you think are better and can work for others that are trying to scale their company with so many new people coming in?
Yeah, so building your team is very important. That's something that Ryan and I have learned early and often. And sometimes that person that you hired for that job, they might be great in that moment for that job right now, but the company might outgrow what their capabilities are. And it's totally okay to sit down with them and tell them, hey, I want you to stay, but we need to find something else for you because what you're doing right now isn't bringing us a lot of value. And that is always a really hard conversation, but it's always out of constructive feedback that you have to think about those things when you're telling someone some hard news, right? And it's also being able to hold those people accountable as well. I think accountability is something that a lot of companies struggle with. I know we struggle with that as well. And it's being able to set up when they first get to that company the expectations of how things are going to be run. A lot of people don't know what it's like to come into a startup environment. They come from a corporate world. I came from a corporate world. It took me a long time to kind of figure out where my sweet spot was. And that's okay, but you just have to be able to be open and honest and ask for the help when you need it.
Okay, on that point, the culture is very different working in startups. I've worked in startups most of my career. What is it that's so different, and what does culture mean for you in the startup world?
I think it's so difficult because when you go into a corporate environment, there's usually, you're in a box usually. These are the things you do, these are the roles, these are the tasks, you get them done, you report it to your manager, there's usually something to show. But at a startup, there's usually not a lot to show. Like, you can't be like, oh, look at this awesome report of data, blah, 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 that I built. But at a startup, sometimes it's those things that you can't see that are getting done behind the scenes. And for a lot of people, that's hard. They want something concrete that they can hold in their hands, that I accomplished at the end of the day, and this is what I did. And at a startup, it's just not like that. That's just not the environment. It's constantly chaotic. You're constantly being pulled in 14 different directions. And you also have to wear a lot of different hats. And sometimes you have no clue what you're doing, and it's a Google away. Figure it out. You'll hear that a lot. Figure it out. And you do. You have to go through and you have to figure it out on your own because you might only have a team of 4 people. And no one's ever done HR or accounting before. And you just figure it out. You ask other people in your network. You have to get out there because the startup economy is really there to support you. And there's other people. You think you're struggling, you think you're going through something, believe me, 14 other entrepreneurs in this city have also struggled through that. So there's always a resource out there for you to, whether it be some awesome place like Rev 1 or going to a startup week or going to a networking thing where you don't know anybody. getting out there is just so important for all of that.
That's very true. You were saying that at Share, you're trying to really build a culture of openness. What else are you trying to build into your culture over there? What's important to your team?
Yeah, so a culture of openness, honesty, transparency, and accountability, like I said, are pretty much, the things that we all try to live by. And it's really also understanding that some days are going to be really, really hard. And we're all pretty open about how hard those days are. But there's also days where you're going to be able to celebrate some wins. And if you think back to all the hard, struggling times, that you didn't really know where you're going to be, and you really celebrate those wins, I think that that's so important to celebrate wins. And we want people to understand the impact that we're going to have on different communities as well, and that vision of everyone, a sharing economy. It's gonna really transform here in the next few years from mobility and car sharing, and it's just going to be a really different world that we live in the next 15 to 20 years.
So as you're thinking of hiring people to work in Share or in any startup, really, what are some of the characteristics you're looking for to know that somebody's going to succeed in that environment?
Earlier today, I think someone said grit, which is huge. Resiliency and grit are probably the two biggest things that you need to work in a startup environment. You have to be able to pick yourself up after a really hard day and just keep going. And some days that's really hard because you're like, why would I go back to that? Why would I ever do that? And having that grit and that resiliency, it's just invaluable. I honestly didn't know how much grit and resiliency that I actually had until I got into this. And we moved to Portland and had no help with the kids, had no home, barely had any money, had to take out loans so that we could pay for rent. And we knew no one in that city. And after going through that and, not really knowing what was going to happen next and just kind of believing and we just kept going, I look back on that and I'm just like, whew. How do we get over that when we did? And now we're here where we are now, which is like unbelievable to me. And sometimes I'll stand up we share an office with Script Drop. I don't know if you guys know who that is. They're on that wall too next to us. We share an office with Script Drop, and they've grown too like crazy in the past few months. And sometimes to stand up and just look around and see, what we've built and how many people are in our side of our office, it's just insane to see that there's people who also believe in this and believe in the vision.
That's awesome. So as you were saying, what travel looks like in the next 20, 30, beyond years, what do you see for Share, and how do you see the future of Share belonging to that world?
Yeah, I think that Share is definitely a part of that whole sharing economy. Eventually, we have vehicles out on the street, kind of like Zipcar, where you can pick up one of our vans or vehicles and take it wherever you need to take it. It might be a driver who works part-time for us, and they go and get that van to pick up a couple hours, and they clock in, right? And we assign them some some riders to go pick up as they need to work. Because a lot of people have 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs, and this would be just something flexible that would fit into them being able to make a little bit of extra money.
So I'm going to leave time for questions at the end. So I've got one more. As you're talking to entrepreneurs every day, what is your single best piece of advice that you would give to somebody that's thinking about taking that big leap?
Planning is really important. When we started our first business, I stayed at the James Cancer Hospital because we needed that steady paycheck, and we needed the health insurance, which was really important because we had children. And when the opportunity came to move to Portland, it was a leap of faith, one, and it was also ending that addiction to a paycheck. When Ryan first made that leap, we had planned a 6-month runway for ourselves, And that was really helpful because we didn't know when our next customer was going to come. We didn't know if they were going to pay the bill. We don't know. And so planning that 6-month runway was really important for us in that first business. But then when the second part of it came, that was a little bit harder to plan because they were like, you have to be here in 30 days. We were like, what? So that was insane. But taking that leap of faith for me was really important because I got to prove to myself that I could just take a risk, which a lot of women, especially women of color, don't take a lot of risk in their lives. And for whatever reason it might be, the paycheck or healthcare or whatever it might be. But taking that risk is just such an important step for any entrepreneur. And if you don't know how to do that, you have to find that support system, though, too. I'm lucky that it's Ryan and that every day we get to go through the highest highs and the lowest lows together, and then regroup at the end of the day and be able to say, all right, what did we learn? What can we improve on? And how do we not make these mistakes again? So that's for me was the biggest thing, was realizing how much grit I had, being able to take that risk, despite what everyone said.
With that, I want to open it up to questions. Yes, Wayne. Hold on. Shannon's right behind you.
Oh,
with the
Wayne.
microphone.
Hi, Wayne. I couldn't figure it out either, no.
I can hear you. So, assuming Ryan, he's here. Assuming Ryan was employable. Following up on the question you just answered, under what circumstances would you have reversed the situation? So, Ryan, if you were continuing with a job that stable, would you have reversed it? So, would you have been the one to take it out as the startup, and Ryan providing the sort of the support infrastructure until such time as you both join the company?
So I think that for me personally, I don't think so, because my job was such a personal impact for myself. When I was caring for patients, that was really my life. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a nurse. And so I got a job as a PCA, which is a patient care assistant at the James. Quickly found out I didn't want to be a nurse, which I was very happy for, because then I didn't waste time and money on school and all that stuff. And so Ryan was kind of like in a boring industry. I don't think he was in the mailing industry. Yeah, see, lots of fun. So Ryan was in the mailing industry. I just don't think he had a personal level of connection to it, unless you did and I didn't know randomly. Okay. And so I think for me, like, my job was just so impactful on individuals that I think that that was the best way for us to do it.
Okay, so the question is, for those that are on Facebook or way in the back, how do you help corporate customers that are using this service to shift their own hours to accommodate for those taking the ride share?
It's a great question. We get that a lot because a lot of people are like, well, I go get my kids and I have to go to the grocery store and I have to do life, right? Life is there. Life continues on. And so when we work with corporations, we do offer a few things. So if you did have to stay for that meeting, you would let us know. We'd cancel the ride, and then we would book you a Lyft ride home. So we do partner with Lyft in some cities so that we can do that concierge type one-off ride with them. So that's been super helpful. Our pickup points are usually at grocery stores like Walmart's. And we get them to also be a sponsor and subsidize some of those rides because we're bringing them in customers at the end of the day for dinner and whatever else they might need to pick up from the store. And so we really try to target people at corporations who are, whether they're decision makers, right? Usually we never really try to go to a gatekeeper of sorts. And it's really showing the HR and the sustainability departments why this is a good idea and why they should buy into this and pay either for all of it or a portion of it. So we have both of those models running today. Some companies pay 100%. They don't have a limit. They don't have a cap on it. As many people can ride as we can possibly get on our platform. And then there's another portion where the rider will pay $1 or $2 or whatever it might be, and then that company covers the rest of it, because then it gives a little bit for that rider. That rider has to either opt in for it and pay that couple bucks, and if they cancel, they get a cancellation fee. It kind of gives them more skin in the game. And so when we present those things to corporate customers, they start to see and realize how important it is.
Okay, I have another question. I know it's not fair because I already asked a lot, but to that point, if you have a corporate customer that's doing this as, say, a test or they're trying it out, what kind of metrics do you come back with, or do you survey the users so that you're building that case for what you do? How do you do
we
that?
do surveys at the beginning. So we do, if you want to do a pilot, we do a survey at the beginning to see who would opt into it, how many people would opt into it, how many days a week would they use it. And then throughout that process, we send people to that company. So for example, for Chase, we launch with them at the end of the month. We're going to send out our brand ambassadors to their office every week up until we start to educate them about Share, what it is, why they should use it, helps them download the app, and then schedule their first rides. So a lot of it is about education and getting them to realize, a customer like Cover My Meds, they're all young, they all know what's going on. They're like, this is cool. But for those other companies that have been stuck in their ways for a really long time, that's the education that we try to provide them. And then at the end of the pilot, we do another survey to see what kind of feedback we get. And then hopefully those folks who sign that contract will sign it up again for permanent.
Cool. All right, we have a question over here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your inspirational story. Yeah, so obviously you chose to take venture, so I'm curious to know why you did so and what advice do you have for other startups looking for that?
Yeah, so I like to boast that we've raised money just here in Ohio, which is huge. For us, we did that purposefully to show other companies that you can raise capital here in Ohio and you don't have to leave if you're in that early stage. Now for a Series A and beyond, we're obviously gonna have to go somewhere else, but if you're here and you're a seed stage company, there's money here for you. And we did that on purpose to show other people like, hey, look, there's resources here, you just really have to seek them out and find them. Great resources here at Rev 1, they can introduce you to people. We took the venture route because we knew we wanted to grow and scale very quickly. And that's why we did that. We also have some angel investors, which if you guys don't know what angel investors are, definitely look into that. And so that network of venture capitalists that took a risk and invested in us, they're not only investors, but they're also, they're mentors, right? They're there to help you. And they're experts at this. This is our first time doing this. It's good to make tons of mistakes and fail, but they're always going to be there to tell you, well, look at this company, this is how they did it. So I think that's invaluable to be able to have that expertise.
I'm interested to know, what is Share's value proposition to somebody who values control over convenience. So, because I'm sure you run into that all the time.
Oh, that's funny. So our value prop is really impacting the community. That's our biggest thing, is that we understand that transportation is a gap that needs to be filled that gives other people opportunity. So that single mom who can't get to work because she doesn't have a car and she doesn't want to spend, 2 hours walking after she gets off the bus to get to work, that's huge. If she misses that one paycheck for her family, that could be disastrous for her and anyone really in the community. And that's what we really want to do, is we want to impact the community and show people that there's other ways to move.
I don't know if this on. From a business perspective, have you guys thought about, outside of obviously the social impact, have you thought about going into any of the entertainment districts?
Wait,
Is that a concept already in place?
we're going to repeat that question.
Sure, go ahead.
You're talking about moving into different industries, like entertainment district.
Or like, personally speaking, I just had a conversation with some business owners in Howell that said, parking is a problem. We would love to have a ride-share service in Howell, just go through the neighborhoods on a Thursday through Saturday basis.
Yeah, so that's what we do in Dublin pretty much with the seniors, and that can be translatable to entertainment. In the future, we also see value in partnering with someone like the Blue Jackets, right? You buy your ticket, we have an API that plugs into their back end, and you'll be able to schedule that share ride to go to the hockey game, so you can have that extra beer or whatever it might be, because then they get some value out of it. And then we take them home. So plugging into those different spaces is definitely something that we've definitely talked about. And it also comes down to who's going to fund those rides, right? That's always the question that we get is, well, who's going to fund these rides? Well, if they are like the city of Dublin who wants to make an impact on their community, they're like, we're all in, we're paying for it. And so those are the little things that we really have to work out. Oh, in the Short North or in Powell? Oh, I don't know. I'll talk to you about that afterwards. Definitely.
All right, Mary, you had a question?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mary from Ohio State. So I'd like to pull the thread that you talked about, the single mom. So what about the whole idea of, and you can appreciate this coming from the James, that if you have to take a child or to a wellness visit in the middle of the day, it could take 45 minutes just to get to and from your car. And then there's the visit. So what about taking your children, family members, or yourself to visits? And this is part of life, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
Have you thought about that?
Yes, so we actually have met with a few hospitals to figure out patient transportation for them. They have a huge problem of no-show rates and cancellations, which cost the clinic a ton of money. And so we've spoken with Cleveland Clinic and University Hospitals about how we can impact those numbers, and then also their patient satisfaction score. So for a lot of you who don't know, there's patient satisfaction scores out there where the hospitals get reimbursed based on those scores, and that's huge for them. And so we've went to them and we've really shown them like how they can use share for their patient transportation. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but that's definitely on the roadmap for us, is to figure out how we can get groups of patients to move together to and from appointments, because then it really lowers their comorbidities of ending back up in the emergency room or ending up with an infection or whatever else it might be. So that's a great question, because there's transportation and healthcare. Those are two huge things that go hand in hand together.
So I have another question real quick. All right, you go first. All right, fine. I've had a few.
Oh, no, I don't want to go first.
Sorry, I didn't mean to tease. You mentioned Lyft and the bus system. You mentioned them as partners, but are they also competitors in some ways? I mean, how is that working together? So, like, for instance, some large corporations downtown give bus passes, or people are choosing Lyft instead. How does that work for you as a partner /
competitors. So we don't really see them as a competitor. Their business model is just so different than ours. Their funding is different than ours as well. And we feel like in the sharing economy, partnership is going to be the biggest thing for all of us to succeed. If we don't have partnerships, because you've heard of Share Now, but there's a ton of other microtransit companies. You can find them. You will find them. Chariot shut down, so their model didn't work, obviously, and our model is completely different. But in that space, we believe that there is room for everyone. There are trillions of miles up for grabs right now, and the more people that we can get to do these types of services, the quicker we will be able to alleviate a lot of the things that are going on our roads.
Great. Your turn.
I'd like to say that was my question, but it was not. I'm wondering, you're saying that you partner with other rideshare the other rideshare industry. And
Lyft, yeah.
I'm wondering, are you doing the same thing with them, or is they're picking up the
No, they're picking up
overflow?
like the one-off rider that maybe missed their share shuttle, or they are sick and they have to go home, or their child is sick. So we partner with them for that one-off ride, because we're not going to send out one van for one person. That's not our model.
Okay, so then you have a van that picks up how many?
So we have minivans that seat up to 7 people, and then we also have 24 passenger Starcraft buses.
And those vans have to be at capacity in order to get.
They don't need to be at capacity, but it's usually 4 or more riders.
Yeah. Great. Good job.
Thank you.
There's going to be a fight here soon.
Over this valuable microphone. I had a question for you back at the beginning of your story. You mentioned that when you came out of the incubator in Portland, that the idea is very different today than it was then. Yes. I'm curious about what approach that you took to get those insights to make the shift, and maybe a little bit about that.
Sure. So when we left the incubator, we had the vision of what in-vehicle entertainment was going to look like in the future when everyone's a passenger. And so what we built for Jaguar Land Rover was a video, kind of like YouTube, but it was all STEAM and STEM content that was going to be integrated into the vehicles, where the parent who's driving can control iPads in the back seat. So through the infotainment screen, in our demo, we actually got it to work. We were able to play, pause, and skip content on the kids' iPads. So that was really cool to see that kind of come forward. Well, that was a little bit too futuristic for them. And so when we came home, we regrouped, and that's when we were like, all right, mobility is a huge space. What are we going to do now? That's when we built our first we had our first sale in Boston to build a mobility platform for a customer there. And so once we went through that, we built it, they used it, all that good stuff. Things come up when you're building software constantly, right? And after a few months of that, of tweaking and doing things for them, we were like, wow, we really need to get into the operations of this to fully understand the problems. What are the problems that different demographics are facing? And so that's when we started to actively look at how to pivot. And with the guidance of our investors and a lot of advisors, they were like, you should do it. We also got into an accelerator here in Columbus as well. It was a Smart City Singularity University accelerator. And that's where we really were like doing all of this market validation and really talking to customers about if they would use it. And that's when we were like, all right, we're going to take out personal guarantees on 2 vehicles, and we're going to drive, and we're going to learn. We're going to learn why the software isn't working, what we need to fix. And if we hadn't done that, I don't think that we would be where we are today. And so we started our first rides in October of 2017. We had 2 15-passenger vans, 5 drivers, and then we were all driving as well. Me, Ryan, our COO, our interns, anyone who had a driver's license was driving. And that was invaluable to learn from how the user interface was with the driver, the user interface was for dispatch, And that was a risky thing to do, to take out personal guarantees on 2 vehicles. But we did it, and we learned so much from it, and our software platform wouldn't be where it is today without doing that. And today, we have 60 vehicles and 115 employees. So that's how much we've grown in the last, since we started our first rides.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you.
That's huge. That's huge. That's great growth.
Great question. Thank you.
Do we have other questions? I thought I saw somebody over here, or were you just playing through here? Okay. So I want to thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming out here and doing this. This was wonderful. I've got a gift.
That's so nice.
It's edible.
Ooh, yay. Always fun. Thank you.
So thank you again for coming out, and I want everyone to give you a great round of applause.